Hey guys, Homedog here. Today we're going to talk about a Maw of Mischief build. This build will scale mostly by damage over time. The minion explosions themselves do a lot of damage, but for clear, the damage over time being proliferated by Bereks allows us to just wipe the entire map out. There are a few key pieces to making this build work. We'll go over them as I show you some Maze of Minotaur. The big one, though, is a trigger socketed spell using Stormbrand. This allows us to continuously pump out Heralds of Purity. We use 3 auras. You can see them down here: Aspect of Spider, Flesh and Stone, and Herald of Purity. Let's get those turned on, and we're going to show you some gameplay and talk through as we go. One other major thing, Herald of Purity is scaled up in this Invictus shield. So we have very high level Herald of Purity. This gives our heralds a lot of life. This is a very budget version of the build. I've got less than 100 chaos invested. So let's get right into it. We use summon skeletons to start out and to scale the explosions on bosses. They are very weak compared to our Heralds of Purity. So while mapping, you'll see I almost never use the actual skeleton skill. You can see we are using a lot of triggered skills in this build. We're triggering our Desecrate and our Bone Offering to bring our block chance up to 75%. We're also triggering our Tempest Shield. Our defensive layers rely very heavily on our block with our Flask up. So when we have all of our buffs up, we have 75% chance to block attack damage. Our spell block is somewhere in the mid 50s. I will link a POV here in a little bit, and we'll do a full explanation of the skills once we've seen some gameplay. You can see it clears extraordinarily well. We have to channel for a fraction of a second to make 1 or 2 of our heralds explode, and that's all you need for clear. We're not running a life flask because we're running Enduring Cry. The endurance charges also fuel our Immortal Call. So here we're on the boss. We're going to get up 9 skeletons. And I failed that miserably. Do it again. Get our skeletons on him, explode. And now we're just going to finish him off with our heralds.
This is the key to a crucible.
Alright, so let's look at what the actual build looks like. I mentioned earlier, we really need to trigger a socketed spell on our weapon. This allows us to keep Stormbrand up, which against unique or rare enemies keeps us spawning Heralds of Purity. We also throw in our Bone Offering and our Desecrate here, just so while we're mapping, we don't have to stress out about casting them. I also use a cast when damage taken in my gloves to throw out Immortal Call, Flammability, and Tempest Shield. You might question why we're using Flammability when we have Witchfire. It's because we run out of flasks on major bosses, and it's nice to have some curse up. Flammability is actually stronger than our Despair Aura for this build, but Despair Aura is always on while we're mapping, so that's why we use those two in conjunction. We run Flesh and Stone for the damage mitigation, and then we're running Enduring Cry with Second Wind for life regen and that physical damage. In our shield, we need a shield with the +1 corruption. This ends up giving you +2 to your levels of your Purity Sentinels when we put it with our Empower support. Our Empower support should be level 4 eventually. Again, this is a very budget version of the build, and also you would much prefer the cold version of this shield. However, it's also more expensive. The cold version makes you cannot be frozen and saves one of your flasks. So we could have changed this to a move speed flask. The Maw of Mischief is going to be socketed with our damage over time gems, burning damage, unbound ailments, combustion, and deadly ailments. We want to eventually have awakened versions of burning, unbound, and deadly ailments. You can see here deadly is the much more expensive skill gem, so I don't have it yet. Also, anomalous combustion support helps us out by making our skills burn faster. In our 6 link, we are running our skeletons. We're buffing them up with Minion Damage, Empower to raise the level, Minion Life, Meat Shield for more life, and then I also threw my Flame Dash in here because I have nowhere else to socket it. Items mostly want to focus on life and finishing out our resists. Roomies is definitely required for this build. You can see without flasks, without bone offering, we're sitting on very low blocks. With those up, we get a considerably higher block chance. Our skill tree is a bit all over the place. We want to scale Minion Life as much as possible. We need spiritual aid. This allows us to take our minion damage and apply it to our explosions. Maw of Mischief explosions cannot benefit from spell power, so minion damage scaling is very, very useful for this build. We're taking things that proliferate our ignites better. Also, fire damage does scale the explosion. We're running elemental overload. The Stormbrand keeps this up almost always. And we do come down to the Constitution Life Will. Everything else is scaling elemental damage. I actually need to take this one off. And then we're running spell block chance where we can pick it up. As I finish out the last 5 points of this build, they'll go into my Minion Life nodes that I still have hanging about. And that will scale the initial explosion even larger. Berek is a requirement, as Berek allows us to take that ignite that we get on the initial purity explosion and proliferate it out to everything. If you have any questions at all, feel free to hit me up. I'll be posting this on Reddit and Path of Building link below. Thank you.